You are listening to The Anatomy of Success by Nicolas Darvas, narrated by Samuel Casey. Introduction. Some friends of mine once came to me and asked if I would spend an hour or so with an acquaintance of theirs, a European who had been in the United States for close to 7 years and was, as they described him, entirely lost. Now, in his early 40s, this man was convinced he had made nothing of his life and was headed in an even more aimless direction than the one which he had been following. In the short time he had been in this country, he had had a series of low-paying and otherwise unfulfilling jobs. But something in the dim reaches of his soul told him that he should be successful at something. Exactly what it was he had talent for, however, he had no idea. My friends asked me to see him and give him some advice. When this man and I met for the first time, there were two things that impressed me immediately. The first was that he was dressed with impeccable elegance which pointed to excellent taste, and the second was that he had a marvelous speaking voice which created an impression of extraordinary sophistication. My initial reaction was extremely favorable, and I was certain there would be many talents the stranger would reveal to me before our meeting was at an end. I was mistaken. Aside from the generally amiable disposition he displayed, there was nothing especially shattering about either his intelligence or his personality. For one thing, he seemed almost incredibly naive about matters related to what is generally considered the business world, and for another, he seemed totally devoid of creativity or imagination. He had no special interests aside from trips to museums or reading art columns in the newspapers. He was, in short, one of those seemingly colorless individuals who, one is convinced, could never in 1,000 years build a career of any significance for himself. I was just at the point of cutting our meeting short, extending my hand to him and, rather unhopefully, I'm afraid, wishing him the best of luck, when quite suddenly the thought occurred to me. Was I not being a trifle hasty in dismissing this man as a hopeless case? Wasn't there something special about him? There had to be. I realized then that I had nearly forgotten what most impressed me about him at the beginning of our meeting. I knew at that point that I was being hasty in trying to shrug off this individual's career problems. There were, as there are in the case of nearly everyone, distinguishing characteristics, and in this man's case they were what I've already stated. He had excellent taste, and his speech, marked by a charming European accent, commanded one's interest and attention. Why, then, couldn't this man capitalize on these very assets, despite the fact that they appeared comparatively minor when one considered his total personality? The first suggestion which occurred to me took the form of a question. Had he ever considered the possibility of becoming a social secretary? Rarely have I seen a man so surprised. Did I consider being a social secretary the epitome of success? He asked. He only changed his expression when I pointed out that I only made this suggestion because it would lead to a promising area, an area where his elegant manner and his interest in the arts would be considered an asset. The area I thought of was in antiques. He did not answer me directly, but he did say he would think about it. Several months passed, and a curious thing occurred. Not only did the man secure a job as a social secretary to a prominent New York family, but he liked the idea of selling antiques. Partially through the family's assistance, he proceeded to secure part-time freelance work as a representative to sell antique Italian furniture. It hadn't taken this man long to acquire a fundamental knowledge of antiques, and through the contacts he has made in social circles, this seemingly hopeless case, within a few years, has become one of the best-known antique dealers in the world with 27 offices in various countries. The experience taught me an interesting lesson. It is simply this. The individual in search of success should consider every attribute he possesses, no matter how minor this attribute may appear. The person to whom I gave the advice is hardly a distinguished thinker, nor would he prove particularly adept in a highly competitive business situation. But he, like everyone else, has assets, and he has made capital of them. I have always been convinced that anyone can become an outstanding success, providing several factors are true. He has analyzed himself thoroughly to know the field for which he is best suited. He has analyzed the field itself and has decided on the path of least resistance to achieve the goal, and while moving towards it, has forever kept his eye on that goal, never wavering for one moment from the direction he was to follow, always building upon the very things most significant to making gains. Achieving success is, essentially, a simple
Sample complete. Ready to continue?